So, one of the things is I thought for people that never had done any access, they might wonder what an infinite being was. And so I'm going to read the part where Gary talks about his point of view about being an infinite being. He said, the way I personally understood infinite being was by meditating to see how far outside my body I can go in all directions. Initially, I thought being an infinite being meant I was outside of my body. But that led to the idea that an infinite being didn't have a body. A lot of people think that an infinite being wouldn't need a body, but that isn't it. You have to get that you, as an infinite being, chose to have a body. All the people that might resist their body. You chose to be embodied. I mean, that's beautiful, right? You have chosen to be embodied since the beginning of time. You chose to have the kind of body you have for people that resist their body too in any way. You chose it, baby. You chose to have the kind of body you have, and you chose everything that's going on in your life. So it's always lovely to know if you chose it all, that you can choose something else, isn't it?
Can we, I know it comes back to this, but can we do the,
yeah.
expand
you or me?
out? You.
I have to, okay. So we're just going to, for a second, expand out and drop our barriers.
So this is what he was talking about, and like how to get a sense of being an infinite being.
Yeah. And I find he says humanoids, which a lot of us are, those little empaths that want to change the planet, who want to do 1,000 things at the same time, that we are meant to live 100 million miles expanded out in every direction. And some of you already did that just because I mentioned it. But it's something I like to think about all the time. I wake up in communion expanded out at this point. It's pretty gorgeous. I really love it. And I asked Gary at one point, do you wake up in communion with every molecule? And he said, yes. And I was like, oh, cool. Because I do now too. So but you can drop your barriers, any energetic barriers that you have. And by the way, those energetic barriers are pretty much meant to protect you from things that don't matter, like judgment. Because judgment is like a fart, that somebody farts in your direction. And you just, wow, a fart, like somebody judged me. Or you could be like, oh, a fart. Thank you for showing me exactly how stinky you are. Like, thanks. Maybe I won't, I don't know, go into business with you or date you or something because you're not super fun. But that thing of, if you drop, like, the judgment is what tends to have our barriers go up, either our self-judgment or our acknowledgement is like our knowing of someone else's judgment. So would you just notice it's all farts and melted now? So would you be willing to drop your barriers down, just melt them like they were nothing, like you never needed them, like it was always made up? Would an infinite being need protection? Never. Well, if it was late for anybody, pot.
I find one of the easiest ways to do that too is to just like take a deep breath and like relax. Just like relax into your body. Yeah.
Into the space, into the molecules.
Also from Shannon O'Hara.
She's totally brilliant. But just drop your barriers all the way down. And even if you just begin to look at, like, you can't find the end of you, but if you have like kind of a place where you notice how big your energy is, just expand it out bigger, maybe 10 feet. Fill the corners of the ceiling of the room, the corners of the floor of the room, just to begin with. And then expand out 100 miles in every direction, all the way up, straight down into the nurturing generative earth, and behind you, in front of you, beside you, expand out. And just keep expanding out until you cover your city, until you cover the United States. And if there's any place you notice that you can't expand out, just drop your barriers some more and notice if you have any judgments or if you bought into anybody else's judgments today or ever, and just kind of meld them.
That was one of the most,
because they're farts.
That was one of the most, that was a huge gift that I got from you in doing this expand out exercise. I used to notice that I would get stuck at a certain point, or it would feel like there was a wall, and you were like, oh, and like basically that's where you're holding on to a judgment or a lie. And if you just are willing to let it go, you can just kind of like expand right through it. It just melts, like you said.
And the thing is, like, if you'll just go, oh, I'm functioning from a lie, cool, and bring some consciousness to it, sprinkle it with consciousness, you just melt it. Once you realize that lies are heavy, that judgments are heavy, and you realize, I don't want to be run by anything that's a lie or like it's made up. I realized, I said this recently to Gary too, I was like, everything's made up. Because like if human beings weren't on the planet, there wouldn't be any judgments. There wouldn't be any this is right or that's wrong. None of it. Animals just don't do that. Trees don't do that. I'm pretty sure dinosaurs don't do that. So like they just function on instinct and things like that. It's only human beings that are like, oh, this shirt is wrong. The way I look is wrong. Like no one else does that, just human beings. So then I realized then it was all made up by different people. And at some point we all adapted and adopted the rules that like, this was right and that was wrong and this was right. And they change all the time too. So again, they're just made up. And would you be willing to notice that all the rules are just made up? Everything right and wrong and good and bad is made up. Not one thing isn't made up by human beings. Someone made it up at some point and people just solidified it. So would you be willing to melt it? Just melt it. And just notice if you're ever reacting to something like that, that it's not real. So, which is like so awesome.